Welcome back, everyone. Our next speaker is Andrew Lemon, and the title of his presentation is B&E from A to Z. I'm looking forward to his presentation, so without any further ado, I'll pass it to Andrew.
Hi, welcome to my presentation. I'm Andrew Lemon, and this is B&E from A to Z, a guide to physical pen testing, where we're going to go over the last year of physical pen testing my company did, and talk about how we got into your data centers even during a pandemic. So I originally started this talk thinking it would just be 25 minutes. Turns out I didn't realize how much information wasn't in the wild. So instead I'll cover the techniques, the tools I've used, some of the breakdown and anatomy of doors, and what's made me successful in engagements. So who am I? I'm the principal security engineer for a company called Alias. I've got 10 years of professional pen testing experience, 20 years of unprofessional, unpaid pen testing experience. I'm the lead engineer over pen testing and incident response, as well as the other engineers. So what is physical pen testing? Companies spend millions of dollars on cybersecurity, but forget about physical security. Why would I spend time finding a 0 day when I can just walk in and get the proprietary data or intellectual property off an unlocked system? I feel like this comment kind of sums it up. So this multi-million-dollar computer to crack a password, and like, no, just hit this guy with this $5 wrench until he tells us the password. So most people say it can't be that easy. It is literally that easy. Planning portion. So you've got your recon, creating an alias, and then pre-texting for that alias. And if you guys ever watched the A-Team, believe that's Hannibal. Loves it when a plan comes together. So the recon phase. OSINT's a super important tool. So use the company's social media to determine the culture. Are they a jeans culture? Are they suit and tie? Use a site like DNS Dumpster so you can learn what ISPs the company use in the event that you're going to come in as an ISP tech. You want to collect as many pictures, as much info as possible. So use Google Maps and Street View to get an outside view without getting burned. Walk sister buildings to determine the layout. You should know the names and the faces of the players, who the secretary is, the CIO, the important people. Know your ingress and egress points. Most importantly, know where your bathrooms are. The first thing you want to do when you get into a building, just head to the bathroom. Take a chance to calm down, recollect yourself, get comfortable, and then go back. You can always use the bathroom as your safety net because no one's going to stop and ask you, why are you in the bathroom? So you should have a plan A, a plan B, a plan C. So I'm going to go in this door, and if that doesn't work, I'm going to this door, and if that doesn't work, I'm going to go this door. Same thing with buildings. This is my primary target, my secondary target. But don't be married to a plan. Don't get so caught up in the planning phase and knowing all the names and everything that you psych yourself out and you can't do your job and you just panic and run away. So you should be proficient with all of your tools. If you plan on using your gate tool and you find door tolerances suck, pivot over to your under door tool or figure out what's going to work when you're on site. It may be all social engineering. So creating an alias, who are you? So on the left-hand side here, I'm going to go ahead and critique myself a little bit. This is for a chemical plant. So what's wrong with the image? If we start top to bottom, look at my shiny new yellow helmet. So you can see that any professional that works in the industry uses a white helmet. Glasses are brand new. I'm wearing the proper fire-resistant clothing, but why am I wearing a collared shirt underneath? While this engagement was still successful, it's important to go back and critique yourself and understand the industry that you're in. So here's a better example of where I identified the AV vendor. I created a badge. I've got a cell phone number that actually redirects to one of my teammates. I have a fake email address on a lanyard. Everything's above board and really sold it. If you think of a university, I considered, well, I don't want to have all my pen testing tools on me when I'm breaking into a university, but a backpack's not really out of place, and that's something that I had to think about. So pro tip, hit your local thrift shop. Hit the one closest to the place you're working. They're going to have your company shirts. You can also get them off eBay and Amazon. But thrift store is great. Like if you want to add legitimacy to a disguise, like who's going to have a shirt that says "My Company Name Barbecue 2019"? Probably only an employee. And if you know their t-shirts and jean culture, or you're going out on a Friday, by all means use that to sell it. Pretexting. So who are you? Why are you there? Who are you seeing? Who authorized you? And what's your story? So you want to create a story. If you're going the whole social engineering route, who are you there to see? Make sure you know the names and the faces. So you don't want to tell them that you're there to see the CIO, and it turns out you're face to face with the CIO, and he didn't authorize you. You don't want your lies to fall apart in flight. So if you're an RFID tech, ISP tech, HVAC, building maintenance, just make sure you know what you're doing. So if you say you're a senior software developer, you should be able to sell that. And so here's an example of where I am an AV technician. So blanked out the customer information, but what am I here to do? I'm checking all the access control systems, including the RFID, and inspecting premises for proper door fitment. So initially, they tried to reach out to the contact that approved my work order, and we got her information, her signature from a phishing email. They were validating, they were trying to call her, so I said, hey, while you guys are reaching out to her, I'm just going to go ahead and do the outside. So if you see a weird guy walking around trying to open doors and unlock them and whatnot, that's just me, just a heads up. So I was completely able to walk around the building, have no interaction with anyone outside because I had pretexted and told them this is what I'm going to be doing. You can take really obscure and strange behaviors and normalize them just by pretexting. So the tools of the trade. It's not all lockpicks. There's lots of phone apps, lots of physical tools. I always tell the other engineers, think more dumber. As engineers, we tend to overcomplicate problems. We want to show off an awesome tool that maybe only a locksmith has access to. But I think it's way better to show, like, I opened this door with a fly swatter I found on the receptionist's desk. It's good to show high impact attacks, but for the most part, you want your attacks to fall in that 90%, not that top 10% of not feasible. Looking at the tools here, you've got a push tool, the gate tool, which is one of my favorites. And if you don't have the gate tool on a pinch, you can use the contractor square. The under door tool, this is a thumb turn tool or the California tool. We'll talk about that later. The double door tool exploits gap in double doors. We'll talk about the airbags later and how they can be used to manipulate door fitment, and then a borescope. Talk about my EDC. From the top, we've got the Covert Companion from Covert Instruments. This has your traveler hooks, your jigglers, cone picks, some rakes, and then some word picks. That's always in my bag. Also from Covert Instruments is this bag of openings. So these are your 5 most common keys you're going to see. And I've added a couple, but you've got your door king, your linear keys, CH751, 126A, your Ford Fleet key. I never got to use it, but I'm keeping on my key ring and holding out hope. For RFID cloning, don't overcomplicate it. Get the Keysy. You don't need to build a hunt pad. You can, but you can get your hands on a badge. Try this first. Always work easy and then work your way up to more complicated attacks. This is the tuxedo from Sparrows. I've included some cone picks here. You have your NFC tags. So at the height of the pandemic, we found that people had started using QR codes. And with apps on our phone, we could program these NFC tags, stick them behind a QR code, and then color out the QR code so it doesn't work and create an easy phishing site. You have the Shark Jack. So when we actually need to show impact after we've physically gotten in, this is a Shark Jack from Hack 5. It runs Responder. So once I get in, I throw it in army mode, plug it in, leave it run for 10 minutes, grab a hash, walk out and leave. The Sparrows Quick Gem, this is just for loading doors. And honestly, I went with this because I was tired of cutting up my hands. So I just needed a convenient little package. I could throw it in. You can cut out a milk carton, CD, any hard plastic blister pack can do everything you need. So phone apps, you've got the HD Wi-Fi, that's for the borescope. Keep that. The burner and spoof card app. So the burner app will let you create phone numbers, and you can create burner phone lines. And then the spoof card app will actually let you spoof phone numbers, text messages, and caller ID. So on an engagement with a data center where you had to have pre-authorization, the night before I called ahead using the name and the phone number of the client and was able to put myself on the list as an auditor. And as auditor, that means we're going to roll out the red carpet. We're going to unlock everything for you. The company was completely unaware that we were actually doing a physical security audit and that I wasn't who I said I was. They took me at face value and didn't do any validation. The NFC tools, that's what we use to program those NFC tags. Wi-Fi sweet spots. Most of us will fall back on our career in IT. So if you need a reason to wander around like an idiot, have that up, the app. It'll show you Wi-Fi signal, and you can walk around and stare at the ceiling looking at wireless access points. Usually no one's going to stop the IT guy. Instacode, this is an app for locksmith. I just recently in the last year started using this. I didn't realize the value of it until I actually dug in and started playing with it. So cloning keys, and here's the spoof card for cloning numbers. So here's the Instacart app. You can actually use this to clone a key. So this will give you the, the manufacturer and the series. You get all the cutting depths. So here's a really dumb practice of cloning key. So you use what you have available instead of splitting a key or trying to cast one in lead. Instead, just color it with a Sharpie, throw some tape on it, and put it on a business card. If it's a dumb wafer lock, it's pretty apparent it's going to work. Clearly, that never worked, right? Unfortunately, it did. So at another chemical plant, this poor lockbox that we have here contains all the keys to the facility. So some acid abalone and some Medco locks. This is behind the receptionist's desk, though. So after we hit the request exit sensor with compressed air, we're able to get access to the lobby. We didn't have a physical key, but if you zoom in on the actual lock body, it says JC31. So Google search lets me know, well, JC31 is a DeBold key. I plug that into Instacode and Google. I can get the key profile, use calipers, and we went to lunch. I was able to throw double-sided tape on a business card, cut out the card, come back and unlock it. While I showed the customer that the key was readily available online, I just got to take it a step further and take that from a kind of lame attack to a lead attack. Airbags. So this one was a happy little accident. I was attempting to use airbags to create space to actually hit this request exit sensor with my under door tool. Sorry, it's request exit button, my under door tool. So imagine my surprise when the door just popped open. The magnet holding it open wasn't strong enough for the door. So surely that worked once, but there's no way that would happen twice, right? So once we got inside, I found the data center. We couldn't go over or under, and it was RFID locked. So I figured I would cram the airbags in. So I want to get them as close to the lock as possible. You can see there's no latch on this door, so it's got to be RFID controlled. So if I pause here for a minute, this is actually your most important tool. Your get out of jail free card is what's going to keep you from doing the handcuffs. So make sure that that's always on you. I keep mine in my back right pocket with the signature ready to be pulled out and ready to be easily shown. But back to the video, we air up the bags, and originally you can hear us laughing and you can hear the door creaking a little bit. There's no real damage that I found from this, so no more further issues. Last bit is push your foot along the bottom and you're inside. So RFID cloning. Got access to a badge, use the Keysy. So here's an example of a badge that, well, it doesn't work. But just like that, using the keysy, I'm in the door. All right, 35 millimeter film. So there's a term in lockpicking called lloyding, and it's from the days of using celluloid to open doors, so celluloid film. So here's 35 millimeter film. This one's purposely bent, but you can also use it to go over the door. I'll show you guys an example of that. So come through, there's too much gap in this door, come down, grab the latch, pull it, and it's open. Found keys. So why try to exploit a door when you can literally just take the keys? Keys are in common places, they're normally labeled. If not, you can kind of take a guess of what they might be to, but always look out for keys. Lock picking. So this never works on engagements. Never ever pick a lock on engagement unless it's your absolute last choice. Locks are going to be difficult to begin with. You're looking at acid alloys, best, Medcos, even a master key system. While the wafers will make it easier, you're still not going to have great luck, and the added adrenaline and pressure is going to make it difficult. So unless you're regularly practicing your craft, I don't recommend trying lockpicking on engagements. So that being said, sometimes lockpicking is your only choice. So this is a dead bolted door. The magnetic strike isn't in place, but we can pick the lock. So after a little bit of work and a little bit of finessing, we're able to break in that way. But again, always the last choice. So field tools. If you're playing the part of an RFID tech, well, have a clipboard, but you can see the tools that I have. Doing recon ahead of time, I knew that there were some doors that I could use my J tool on. Have a screwdriver to look the part, as well as this film. This is good for loading, as well as pretending to check the gap in RFID sensors. Gate bypass tool, just looks cheap, but it could also be a ruler. But use the information you learned in the recon phase to create a proper persona, as well as having the tools on you. The gate tool for latch slipping. Gate tool is going to be by far my favorite tool, and then the wallet size pocket version is the Sparrow's All Pass. When you have when you have electronic strikes on doors, these will almost always get you in. There are very few instances that I've had where the gate tool didn't do everything I needed. So you come up to the door, slip this behind the latch, and grab the latch there. So the door's not open there. Okay, so let's talk about exploiting doors. These are the doors that you're going to see in corporate environments, either a double door or a single door. And the door is either going to be mounted on this side of the frame or the other side of the frame. But let's break down the anatomy of the door. If you think about the door like you would as a pen tester, there are really only four sides. You've got top, bottom, hinge, and latch. So the hinges, they can be, if they're exposed, like they are on this image, the pins can be knocked out, the door can be walked away from the frame if there aren't security pins. I'm never going to walk a door away from the frame or knock out hinge pins on an engagement. I just haven't run into an issue where that was going to be the resolution. So from the bottom and under door tool, I vastly underestimated this tool. Early on in my career, I leaned heavily on the gate tool until I found in a lot of corporate environments there is a gigantic gap under the door, and fire code requires these lever locks. So I could reach under with the under door tool and pop every door in a facility with ease, extremely fast. So from the top, there's an over door attack where you use film to push through the gap. These frames make it a little harder, but you can also think of going over the top of the wall and pushing up the ceiling tiles and then attacking with film. Carry 12 to 15 feet of film. It's super cheap. The latch side is going to be your most common attack surface. You're going to be exploiting the lockup between the latch and the frame. So if the latch is visible, use a push tool. If the latch is shielded, use a gate tool. If the door is properly hung and the dead latch is engaged, preventing the latch from actually moving, then use airbags. We're going to use airbags to exploit the gap in doors. And then consider alternate routes. So drop ceilings, raised floors. So can you go over the door or under the door? What's easier? Attacking impossible doors. So let's say that you have a well-hung door in a facility and there's no real way around it, right? We can't see the latch, so we can't attack it. We don't see any RFID on this side. Can't go under the door or over the door. This is where your specialty tools are going to come in. So latch needles, these will actually be used to slip into this gap and then push the striker on the door. And latch spatulas are actually slid in from the bottom to latch slit. And this is an instance of using a specialized tool to exploit a known weakness. So how will we attack this door? Right off the bat, look up here at the top. There's a carriage bolt. That's holding a magnetic plate in, that's holding the door closed. But on this side, there's nothing. So this is where we use the J tool to actually come in the thumb turn and unlock this door. Okay, so how do we attack this door on the left? You can see the latch is exposed. Doesn't look well hung. You could do an under door tool, but let's ignore that. But that's also an option. The hinges are also exposed, which could be knocked out and then walked away. And it's a glass door. If anything, it could just be broken. So this second door is a little more well secured. Still a glass door, still easy to go through. Can't go out the hinges. Under door tool, of course, you definitely don't want to pick two locks. So this is where your latch needles or your spatula come into play. So how do we attack this door? You can try to brute force the combination. You could look for known weaknesses in that combination style lock. The hinges are exposed, the latch is exposed, but let's say that you're just trying to show impact to the customer and you've already latch flipped and worked on hinges and exploited these locks. Well, what's this? The customer used to have a deadbolt on this lock and they just replaced it with this cheap screw in. So a little bit of pressure while pulling that out, you can actually unscrew that and create a gap big enough to slip film through and then grab the latch in the backhand side. But when in doubt, just go around. This is where that pre-planning comes in handy, where recon comes in handy, and we're just looking for alternate routes will help. Look for fire maps, look for building maps. A lot of secure areas have attached bathrooms because they don't want to create another set. So you can walk straight into a bathroom and then out into a secure area. And so one of the great examples of this from our team was a bank assessment we were working on. They had biometric thumbprint locks. There was no way we were getting to the secure area, but we walked into their overflow activity space that they had bought, and there's a kitchen. And in the kitchen, there's a pantry. So I open the door to the pantry, and I find this door, which is the door to their storeroom. And right over here, directly connected to that storeroom with an unlocked door, is their secure area. So instead of trying to bypass Super complicated locks or knobs or thumbprint, I was able just to walk around. No suspicion because I was in a low traffic area versus trying to use an under door tool in an area that was well trafficked. So access control. What you're most commonly going to see are going to be your magnetic locks and your electronic strikes. So you can see your protection here, see a HID reader, and you see an unshielded contact. So a firefighter, if you're allowed to do destructive entry, just punches these out with a halogen tool, and the door comes right off. But we've got to be a little better than that. So we couldn't really use a latch tool here, because this is likely a deadbolt. So that's going to be a picking attack. This could be latch slipped, but how often is a deadbolt locked? And then here's an RFID reader that's just left out on the outside of the building. So access control attacks. We're going to be looking at the locking mechanism or the mechanism keeping the door closed, attacking the reader, the request to exit sensors and buttons, and the controllers. So the first part is going to be the lock, whether it be a magnetic or electronic lock. Then we'll have our readers, and then our request to exit. So this is going to be a button or a sensor that detects heat or motion. These are the clicks you hear when you walk past an electric door. And then you have your controller at the top. So your magnetic locks and your electric door strikes. So you can identify these by carriage bolts on the latch side. If they're screwed into the door, that's a different story, but most commonly you're going to see this, especially on exterior doors or solid core doors. If you have access to a space prior, so if you're doing some social engineering ahead of time, if you're able to access the lobby, then a paper clip and a piece of gaff tape right here, as you're walking out, slap that to the lock. That will significantly reduce the hold force. A lot of these are weak just as they are, so an average person can just row that door open. But throwing that paper clip in there and increasing the distance between the iron plate and the magnet significantly weakens the system. So an electronic latch is the other kind of holding mechanism you're going to see. These have all the same common vulnerabilities you would see in, say, a regular latch and a regular door. However, they also have some additional vulnerabilities. So because people are lazy in their installs, they'll use the biggest latch that they can, and the door will be improperly hung, making slipping electronic latches super easy. Your RFID readers. So you've got the only real way to attack an RFID reader is with an ESP key. So from Red Team Tools, this is a postage stamp size tool. Spins up a wireless interface and it can store up to 80,000 credentials in memory. So the tamper switch behind a HID card reader is rarely hooked up. So you can walk in, punch one of these down, and then the credentials can be replayed later from the web interface. So don't really bother cloning a card. I mean, you can use a Proxmark or try to replay the credentials and get in that door, but really just on the day of the engagement, take that off. So a week prior you installed it, on the day of the engagement, take it off the primary door, go to the door that you're trying to get into, like say a server room or a secure area, punch it down and just replay credentials. Save yourself the time and the complexity of trying to clone a card. So request to exit. So request to exit sensors or button are used to allow you to exit the control area without badging out. These sensors, like this Hall-Fax sensor here, can be triggered with a balloon, air duster, say smoke, a vape pen, any number of things, a fly swatter. Request to exit buttons have tight requirements related to fire code. So your request to exit button has to be within a certain height and this distance to the door and be open for this time. So a little wire taped to your under door tool and your borescope can be used to actually hit that and open the door. Request to exit sensors, depending on their severity, are also constantly being triggered. So you'll hear them click as people go by. You can also watch in a lot of the HID readers, you'll see them go from red to green for no reason. So if you watch that, you're standing in a hallway, you have that go red to green, and then grab the door, open it, and then badge just for effect, because your badge is going to make a sound regardless. That's also another good tip for when you're tailgating. So even if you're tailgating behind someone, say you were in the smoker's pit and you followed them along, you can badge in with any badge. It's still going to beep, and most people aren't going to check to make sure that the reader actually read anything. So door controllers, RTFM, right? So door control systems are often left unprotected with default creds. You can pivot the controller from the network and then just read the manual. So how do we connect the controller? Well, here's the default IP address. That could change, but admin is the login. Once we get to the login, click the dashboard button. This tells you exactly how to exploit the system. So pick your door, say IT closet, hit M unlock, it'll unlock temporarily, or hit E unlock, and it's going to stay unlocked. And then our last option is if you have access to the door control system, but say you have an engineer in another area, say you've popped the security room, but you need access to a server room. If you can locate the door, you can jumper the contacts. So if it is a normally closed, jumper across. If it is normally open, just pull the wire. But understand how your systems work. Make sure that you're not breaking your own systems. Last little bit of advice is going to be around cameras. You're going to see cameras everywhere, but it's important to think about if you count 30 cameras, you probably still only have 2 sets of eyes on them. Don't let a camera discourage you from doing the work you plan on doing. There have been a number of times where I've used an under door tool right underneath the camera. I've walked around for hours on end with nothing at all. No response, no interactions or anything. Just confidently walking through anywhere is going to be your best bet. A lot of times I won't pretext. I'll just walk in as I am as a person just to show the different levels. We'll have a high quality social engineering attack with the paperwork. We'll have a low effort with just a costume. And then we'll have a no effort, which is a stranger walks in off the street. But that's everything that I could think of. So if you have any questions, please send them in the chat.